You know, there's a specific kind of silence that settles over a 40-story skyscraper at 2 in the morning. It's not peaceful, it's heavy, like the building itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to break, and for 3 years, that silence was my only companion. Well, mine and the hum of the HVAC system that kept the air in the lobby of Vance Horizon chilled to a precise 68 degrees. I'm Elias, by the way, Elias Thorne, and to the people in suits who walked past me every morning, I was just part of the furniture, a guy in a polyester uniform making $15 an hour to stare at monitors and swipe a keycard, and honestly, that's exactly how I wanted it. See, when you've spent a decade in a unit that technically doesn't exist, doing things in deserts and jungles that never made the evening news, invisibility isn't an insult, it's a luxury, it's safety. I had a daughter at home, Maya, she was 8 going on 30, with missing front teeth and a devastating questions about why the sky is blue, and she was the only reason I was standing in that marble lobby instead of drinking myself to death in a dive bar somewhere. I needed boring, I needed predictable, I needed a life where the biggest threat was a jammed paper shredder or a delivery guy parking in the wrong zone. But life, as I've learned the hard way, has a funny way of laughing at your plans, especially when you think you've finally outrun the chaos. It started on a Tuesday, raining, of course, because this is Seattle and the sky is permanently grey, and the lobby was empty except for the janitorial crew buffing the floors 3 levels down. Then the elevator chimed, a sound that echoes like a gunshot in an empty atrium, and out stepped Elena Vance. Now, you have to understand who Elena Vance was. She wasn't just the CEO, she was the ice queen of biotech, a woman who took over her father's empire at 32 and turned it into a global powerhouse. She was sharp, terrifyingly intelligent, and possessed a gaze that could peel the paint off a wall. I'd seen her maybe a dozen times, usually surrounded by a phalanx of lawyers and yes-men, walking with a stride that said she owned the ground she stepped on. She never looked at me, never nodded, which was fine. Giants don't notice the ants, right? But that night, at 2:14 a.m., the giant was stumbling. She came out of that elevator like she was walking on the deck of a ship in a hurricane, one hand dragging along the expensive mahogany paneling, her other hand clutching a designer bag like it was a life preserver. My first instinct was the one they train out of you in corporate security but burn into you in the service. Assess the threat, but my second thought was just, great, another rich kid who can't handle her scotch. I watched her zigzag across the polished floor, her heels clicking in an uneven, broken rhythm that set my teeth on edge. She looked messy, hair coming loose from that severe bun she always wore, coat hanging off one shoulder, and she was mumbling something that sounded like nonsense. I stepped out from behind the desk, putting on my concerned employee face, the one that says I'm here to help but I'm really just judging you, and I called out, Ms. Vance? Do you need me to call a car? She didn't answer, she just kept moving toward the revolving doors, but she miscalculated the distance and pitched forward, heading straight for the marble floor. I moved, didn't think about it, just moved, covering the 20 feet between us in about 2 seconds, catching her by the elbow and the waist just before she face-planted. She was lighter than she looked, shivering so hard it felt like she was vibrating, and she slumped against me, her head lolling onto my shoulder, and that's when everything I thought I knew about the situation shattered. See, I've been around drunks, I've been the drunk, I know the smell of expensive whiskey, the sour tang of wine, the chemical burn of vodka, but Elena Vance didn't smell like a bar tab, she smelled like peppermint tea, high-end vanilla shampoo, and absolute blind terror. Her breath was clean, 0 alcohol, not a drop, but she was playing the part perfectly, letting her eyes lose focus, slurring her words when she whispered, just had too much, let me go. But her pulse was hammering against my forearm where I held her, a rapid-fire staccato that screams fight or flight, and when I looked down at her wrist, the sleeve of her coat had pulled back just an inch, revealing 4 distinct, purple bruises in the shape of fingertips. Someone had grabbed her, hard, and recently. I didn't let go, I tightened my grip just enough to steady her and leaned in, dropping my voice to that register I used to use when I needed a terrified hostage to listen to me in a war zone. You're not drunk, Elena, I said, dropping them's Vance because we were way past corporate pleasantries. She stiffened, actually stopped breathing for a second, and her eyes snapped into focus, locking onto mine with a clarity that was chilling. The fog was gone instantly. Let me go, she hissed, and this time it wasn't a slur, it was a command, cold and sharp as a scalpel. There's a grey sedan parked across the street, I continued, ignoring her order. Engine is idling, lights are off, it's been there for 3 nights, I ran the plates, it's a rental under a shell company. Is that who you're performing for? She looked at me then, really looked at me, for the first time in 3 years, and I saw the calculation happening behind her eyes, the risk assessment. She was weighing the danger of the man in the car against the unknown variable of the night guard she'd never bothered to speak to. You're observant for a rent-a-cop, she said, her voice shaking but defiant. And you're a terrible actress, I shot back. You're overplaying the stumble. Who hurt your wrist? She pulled away from me then, smoothing her coat, putting the armor back on, but the cracks were still there. It's none of your business, Elias, she said, using my name for the first time. Probably read it off my badge in that split second. Go back to your desk, forget you saw me, forget the car, just do your job. She walked out those doors, forcing the stumble back into her step as soon as she hit the sidewalk, and I watched on the monitors as the grey sedan pulled out and followed her, keeping a perfect, predatory distance. I should have listened to her. I should have gone back to my crossword puzzle and my lukewarm coffee. I had Maya to think about. I had a quiet life to protect. But there's a thing about men like me. We are broken in a specific way. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car, and he was smiling. But it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a man looking at a problem he was about to solve permanently. You're making this difficult, Elle, Julian said, his voice echoing in the concrete cavern, smooth, reasonable, like they were discussing a merger over lunch. I gave you the option to sign the transfer quietly. You could have taken the money, gone to that villa in Tuscany, lived like a queen, but you had to dig, didn't you? You had to play detective. Elena was backing away, slowly, her back hitting the pillar behind her. You're selling the Omega prototype to the consortium, she said, her voice trembling but audible. It's a biological weapon, Julian, not a pharmaceutical. You're going to kill thousands of people. I'm going to make billions of dollars, Julian corrected, pushing off the car and taking a step toward her, reaching into his jacket, and I saw the glint of metal, not a gun, a syringe, something quiet, something that would look like a heart attack or an overdose. And you're going to have a tragic accident, the stress of the job, the hidden alcoholism. Everyone saw you stumbling in the lobby last week. Elena, the narrative is already written. I just need to provide the ending. He lunged. It wasn't a clumsy grab. It was fast, aggressive. Elena screamed, a raw, terrifying sound, and scrambled sideways, but he caught her hair, yanking her back. That was my cue. I didn't announce myself, didn't yell halt, or any of that movie garbage. I stepped out from the pillar and closed the distance in silence. Julian raised the syringe, focused entirely on her, which was his first mistake. I kicked the back of his knee, hard, shattering the joint structure, and as he buckled, I grabbed his wrist, the one with the needle, and twisted it until I heard the snap of radius and ulna. He howled, dropping the syringe, and I shoved him face first into the hood of the car, pinning him there with my forearm across his throat. Stay down, I growled, pressing harder as he thrashed. But Julian wasn't alone. Of course he wasn't alone. I heard the footsteps behind me a split second too late, the heavy, rhythmic thud of tactical boots. The driver of the grey sedan. I spun, shoving Julian away, but the new guy was a pro. He feinted left and cracked a baton across my ribs. The pain was blinding, white-hot, stealing the air from my lungs. I went down to one knee, gasping, and saw Elena scrambling for the elevator, but Julian was already up, limping but furious, cutting her off. The hired muscle raised the baton for a skullcracker of a shot on me, and I had to make a choice, defend myself or save her. I rolled forward, taking the hit on my shoulder, which felt like it dislocated, and swept the guy's legs, bringing him down. I scrambled up, ignoring the screaming protests of my body, and grabbed Elena, shoving her toward the stairwell door. Run! I roared. Go up, not down. Roof access. She hesitated, looking at me with wide, panicked eyes. Go! I yelled again, turning back to face the two men. The hired muscle was up, pulling a suppressed pistol now. Things just got real serious, and Julian was leaning against the car, face twisted in hate, holding his broken wrist. Kill him, Julian spat. Kill them both. I didn't have a gun. I had a taser, a flashlight, and a set of keys. I sprinted for the door, bullets chipping the concrete inches from my head, spitting dust into my eyes. We hit the stairwell, the heavy steel door slamming shut behind us, providing maybe 3 seconds of cover. Elena was hyperventilating, sliding down the wall. I grabbed her, hauling her up. We are not dying here tonight. Elena, move your ass. We climbed, lungs burning, legs screaming, hearing the door below crash open. We were running a race we couldn't win, not on foot, not trapped in a concrete tube. We made it to the lobby level, but I knew the exits would be covered. Julian wasn't sloppy, he'd have guys at the doors. My office, Elena gasped, clutching her side. Panic room. Behind the bookcase. secure line. It was a cliché, but a cliché was better than a bullet. We scrambled into the elevator. I jammed my keycard into the override slot, locking out the other floors, praying the system wasn't compromised. The doors slid shut just as the stairwell door burst open, and I saw the muzzle flash of the silencer, the bullet spiderwebbing the glass of the elevator door as we started to rise. We were trapped in a glass box shooting toward the sky, with killers below and a storm raging outside, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt that old, familiar electric current of war humming in my veins. "Tell me everything," I said, looking at the woman huddled in the corner of the elevator. "If I'm going to die for you, I want to know why." And she did. She told me about the Omega Project, a virus designed to target specific genetic markers, supposed to be a cure for cancer, but Julian had tweaked it, weaponized it, and was selling it to a regime that didn't believe in human rights. She had found the files, encrypted them, and hidden the key. That's what he wanted. Not money, he wanted the key. The elevator dinged at the 40th floor. We stepped out into the plush carpet of the executive suite, but the silence was gone. The wind was howling against the floor-to-ceiling windows, rain lashing the glass like shrapnel. "The room," I said, pushing her forward. But as we turned the corner to her office, I stopped dead. The door was open. Someone was already inside. Julian had a backup team. Of course he did. 3 men, tactical gear, night vision goggles pushed up on their foreheads, rifling through her desk. They froze when they saw us. I looked at Elena, saw the despair crashing down on her. We were 40 floors up, outgunned, outmanned, and nowhere to go. I looked at the fire alarm pull station on the wall next to me. I looked at the heavy decorative vase on the pedestal. And I looked at Elena. "Do you trust me?" I asked, my voice low. She looked at the men raising their weapons, then at me. "I don't have a choice, do I?" "No," I said. "You really don't." I smashed the vase into the fire alarm, triggering the strobes and the deafening siren, plunging the floor into chaotic, flashing madness. In the confusion, I didn't run away from the gunmen. I ran at them. It was suicide, or it should have been, but chaos is a ladder, right? I tackled the lead guy, using his body as a shield as the others hesitated to fire. We went down in a tangle of limbs and gear. "Get to the roof." I screamed at Elena over the siren. "The chopper pad." She ran, and I was left alone in a flashing, screaming hallway with 3 trained killers, armed with nothing but rage and the desperate need to get home to my daughter. This is where the movie version of this story usually has the hero taking out all 3 guys with some fancy martial arts moves, dusting off his hands, and walking away without a scratch, but reality is messy, ugly, and hurts a hell of a lot more. I took a boot to the ribs that I'm pretty sure cracked 2 of them, and a pistol whip to the temple that opened up a gash sending blood pouring into my left eye, blinding me on that side. But I fought dirty. I used the environment. I used their own confusion against them. I gouged eyes. I bit through a tactical glove. I used the taser on the first guy's neck until he dropped like a sack of cement, convulsing. The second guy, the big one, rushed me, and we crashed through the glass partition of a conference room, landing in a shower of shards. I managed to get him in a chokehold, leveraging my weight, squeezing until he went limp, but the third guy, the one with the suppressed MP5, he was hanging back, waiting for a clear shot. I rolled behind the mahogany conference table just as he opened up, bullets shredding the wood, sending splinters flying like needles. I was cornered, bleeding, vision swimming, weaponless. I checked my belt, flashlight, radio, keys. That was it. I unclipped the heavy maglite, the old-school kind that weighs 5 pounds, and waited. The firing stopped. He was reloading or moving up. I listened, hearing the crunch of glass under his boots. Crunch. Crunch. Pause. He was flanking me. I took a breath, thought of Maya sleeping in her bed under her glow-in-the-dark stars, and threw the keys to the left, hard, against the wall. He turned, firing a burst of the sound, and I surged up from the right, swinging that flashlight with every ounce of desperate strength I had left. It connected with his helmet, creating a ringing crack, dazing him, and I didn't stop. I followed through with a tackle, driving him into the wall, wrestling for the gun. It went off, deafening in the small space, shattering the window overlooking the city. Rain and wind exploded into the room, a vortex of water and glass. We wrestled for the weapon, sliding on the wet floor, breathless grunts and curses the only human sounds in the mechanical shriek of the fire alarm. I finally got my thumb behind the trigger guard, jamming it, and headbutted him. Once, twice, right in the nose, feeling cartilage give way. He slumped, and I ripped the gun from his hands, backing away, chest heaving, pointing the weapon at the door. I was the last man standing, but barely. I staggered out, heading for the roof stairs. The wind-up there was ferocious, a physical force trying to push me off the edge. Elena was huddled behind an HVAC unit, soaked to the bone, shaking violently. She looked up when she saw me, eyes wide at the blood covering half my face. "Did you, are they?" She couldn't finish the sentence. "They're down," I shouted over the wind. "But Julian is still coming, and he won't come alone." We were trapped on the roof of the world, nowhere to go but down. "The helipad," she yelled, pointing. "My extraction protocol. If I enter the code, the private security chopper comes." "Do it," I yelled, scanning the roof access door. She fumbled with her phone, fingers slick with rain, typing furiously. 5 minutes, she screamed. 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a lifetime in a firefight. I positioned myself behind a concrete barrier, checking the MP5. Half a mag left. "Stay low," I told her. The roof door burst open. It wasn't Julian. It was the driver from the garage, the pro, looking battered but very much alive, and he had 2 new friends. They fanned out, tactical, precise. They knew we were cornered. "Give me the key, Elena." Julian's voice boomed from the doorway. He stepped out, arm in a makeshift sling, face twisted in a rictus of hate. "Give it to me, and maybe I let the guard live." He was lying. We both knew it. "Don't listen to him," I yelled, firing a warning burst that sparked off the metal near his feet. They returned fire, pinning us down. Concrete chips flew everywhere. We were losing ground. They were flanking us, moving in for the kill. I looked at Elena. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked resigned. She held up a USB drive. "This is it," she said. "This is what they want." "Throw it off the roof," I said. "If he gets it, we are dead anyway." She looked at the drive, then at the edge of the building, the dark abyss of the city below. Then she looked at Julian. "You want it?" she screamed, standing up, exposing herself. "No." I lunged to pull her down, but she was already moving. "Come and get it." She threw the drive, not off the roof, but onto the open expanse of the helipad, right in the center, a tiny silver object in the pouring rain. It was a bait. A brilliant, suicidal bait. Julian saw it. His greed, his arrogance, it overrode his tactical sense. He broke cover, sprinting for the drive. "Cease fire," he screamed at his men, afraid they'd hit the precious data. He scrambled onto the wet concrete of the pad, reaching for the silver stick. That was the moment. The sound of rotor blades cut through the storm, not from above, but rising from below. The chopper wasn't 5 minutes away, it was already there. It crested the edge of the building, a massive black bird of prey, its searchlight blindingly bright, hitting Julian dead on. The wash from the rotors hit him like a physical blow. He stumbled, slipping on the wet surface, fingers inches from the drive. He looked up, blinded by the light, and I saw the realization hit him. The chopper didn't have a medical cross on it. It had the logo of the FBI. Elena hadn't called private security. She had sent the files to the feds 10 minutes ago. She had called them. "Drop the weapon. Federal agents." The voice from the chopper's loudspeaker boomed, shaking my ribs. Tactical teams were rappelling down from the skids, fast roping onto the roof. Julian's men dropped their guns instantly. Mercenaries don't die for a paycheck when the odds are 0. Julian, though, he knelt there, staring at the USB drive, soaking wet, broken. He looked at Elena, then at me. For a second, I thought he might jump. But cowards want to live. He slumped, putting his hands on his head. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. I slid down the wall, the adrenaline crash hitting me like a freight train. The darkness started to creep in at the edges of my vision. I felt a hand on my face. It was Elena. She was kneeling in the puddle next to me, ruining a suit that cost more than my annual salary, pressing her scarf to the cut on my head. "You stayed," she whispered, sounding amazed. "You actually stayed." "It's my job," I mumbled, the words slurring now. "I'm security." Then the lights went out for real. I woke up in a hospital room that looked more like a hotel suite. Flowers everywhere, beeping machines, and the smell of antiseptic. My ribs were taped, my head was stitched, and I felt like I'd been run over by a tank. Maya was there, asleep in a chair, holding a stuffed bear. And Elena was there, standing by the window, looking out at the city. She wasn't wearing a power suit. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. She looked human. When she saw I was awake, she didn't launch into a speech. She just walked over and poured me a glass of water. "Julian is in federal custody," she said quietly. "The Omega project is destroyed. The board is gutted. I'm cleaning house." I took a sip, wincing. Did I get fired for destroying the conference room? She laughed, a real sound, not the polite corporate chuckle. "Technically, yes. Because I can't have my head of global security working the front desk anymore." I looked at Maya sleeping. "I don't know, Elena. I like boring. I like invisible." "You're not invisible, Elias," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Not anymore. And honestly, I don't think you ever were. You just needed a reason to be seen." 6 months later. It's Thanksgiving. My apartment isn't big, but it smells like roasted turkey and sage stuffing. Maya is showing Elena how to play some video game, and the CEO of Vance Horizon is losing badly, laughing with her head thrown back. We aren't dating, not exactly. It's complicated. We are two people from different planets who collided and survived the explosion. She comes over for dinner. I go to her events when she needs someone who can spot a threat from a mile away. We trust each other. In a world full of liars and masks, that's better than romance. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Because how many other Elenas are out there right now, terrified, stumbling through a lobby, being watched by a wolf in a grey sedan, and the guy at the desk is just watching Netflix? We tell ourselves that if we follow the rules, we'll be safe. But sometimes, the rules are written by the wolves. And the only thing standing between civilization and chaos isn't a law, or a camera, or a policy. It's a person. Just a person, deciding to give a damn when it would be easier to look away. So, tell me, if you saw someone stumbling in the dark, looking scared, smelling like fear, would you step out? Or would you let them fall?